Eldon Krell was only 17, but his name echoed through the underground like a ghost code. Silent, feared, untouchable. With Marla Vent's hacker mind and Tavian Rusk's ruthless street coordination, they weren't just teenagers. They were architects of Britain's most sophisticated drug empire. While police chased ghosts, these three built a digital kingdom from the shadows, hiding behind screens, fake identities, and flawless logistics. But even the smartest criminals make mistakes, and Eldon just made his last. Eldon Krell was just 17 years old when he became one of the most secretive and dangerous names in Britain's underground drug world. To everyone who knew him in the sleepy Norfolk village he called home, he was nothing more than a quiet boy who kept to himself. He rarely spoke in class, walked alone through the school corridors, and never stayed late after lessons. He had no record of misbehavior, no friends to drag him into trouble, and no family history that would raise any suspicion. On the surface, he was just a regular teenager blending into the rural background of British countryside life. But behind the closed door of his upstairs bedroom, a different world existed. The curtains were always drawn. The light from his computer screens glowed day and night. And Eldon rarely slept more than a few hours at a time. What he lacked in social skills, he made up for in intelligence, focus, and obsession. He wasn't interested in football or video games like the other boys in school. Eldon's passion was control, systems, networks, and secrets. He spent years studying the dark web, teaching himself how to bypass firewalls, build encrypted chat rooms, and mask his digital footprint so precisely that even trained cybercrime officers would struggle to trace him. It began small. At 15, he started selling e-books and stolen streaming accounts. At 16, he discovered how easy it was to sell recreational pills online. He built a reputation on hidden forums under the name Black Wolf 93. His customer service was quick, his packaging discreet, and his product pure. Word spread fast in the hidden corners of the internet. By 17, Eldon had created a full-scale distribution system across Britain. Teenagers in schools, dropouts in inner cities, and desperate kids from broken homes became his couriers. He never met them. He only gave them instructions through encrypted messages and paid them in cryptocurrency. No one questioned who was behind the network. Even his most trusted couriers had no idea he was just a teenager. Some assumed he was a former dealer or a foreign supplier. Others believed Black Wolf 93 was actually a group, not a single person. Eldon used this to his advantage. He was faceless, voiceless, and completely invisible to law enforcement. His business model was brilliant. He used local food delivery services as a front. Packages would be hidden inside takeaway boxes or even attached under pizza bikes. For rural areas, he experimented with drone drops that released pill containers in abandoned fields. Eldon's digital operation was equally sophisticated. He ran everything from a custom-built laptop loaded with privacy software and backed by 6 layers of encryption. Every message self-deleted after a few minutes. His suppliers were based in Eastern Europe and operated under aliases just like him. He never asked names. He only asked for quality and consistency. Payments moved through fake charity accounts, offshore wallets, and shell companies that made the money look clean by the time it landed in his hands. At home, Eldon was quiet. His parents believed he was obsessed with coding competitions and online gaming. They had no reason to think otherwise. His grades were decent, and he never came home drunk or high. There were no parties, no loud music, no suspicious friends. Just long hours behind the door, the faint click of a keyboard, and a polite nod when asked about his day. What made Eldon dangerous wasn't just the scale of his operation. It was the fact that no one suspected him, not his teachers, not his neighbors, not even his own family. He had built an empire, hidden behind a schoolboy's face and a hoodie. But empires built in silence eventually make noise. And without realizing it, Eldon had already made his first mistake. A courier caught in Oxfordshire. A pattern of pill markings. A name whispered in a message. Black Wolf 93. The quiet boy from Norfolk was now on a silent countdown. The net was tightening. But Eldon didn't know it yet. Eldon Krell's drug empire, though operated from the small confines of his bedroom, was far from a one-man show. As his customer base exploded across Britain, Eldon realized he couldn't keep up with orders, delivery coordination, and security all by himself. He needed a team, but not in the traditional sense. He would never meet these people, never speak to them on the phone, and never reveal his face. Everything would be handled digitally, with military-grade encryption and strict compartmentalization. Each person in his network had a role, a code name, and access only to what they needed to know. Nothing more. The first person Eldon brought in was a 16-year-old girl from Glasgow named Marla Vent, a computer prodigy who had been kicked out of school for hacking the exam server. Marla had a reputation on underground forums for being brilliant, but erratic. Eldon offered her consistent pay and anonymity in exchange for her expertise. She agreed. Marla became the architect of Eldon's cyber shield. She created a maze of virtual private networks, ghost servers, and fake traffic to disguise the real location of their operations. Any hacker or investigator who tried to trace Black Wolf 93's activity would end up chasing false leads that looped through multiple continents. Marla ensured that every conversation vanished seconds after being read, and every transaction left no trace. Next came Tavian Rusk, a 17-year-old from Leeds who had been living on the streets after escaping an abusive foster home. Tavian was reckless but resourceful, perfect for physical logistics. Eldon noticed him on a darknet forum, offering his services as a runner. Tavian didn't ask questions. He just wanted money and a place to sleep. Eldon offered him both. Tavian began managing couriers in northern England, organizing drop-off locations in parks, parking lots, and abandoned industrial zones. He developed his own network of teenage couriers, most of whom thought they were delivering harmless party pills or didn't care to ask. With Tavian in charge, deliveries were faster, and risk was spread thin. If one runner got caught, the rest kept moving. Eldon's system expanded rapidly. He began assigning couriers specific delivery sectors, rotating them weekly so no predictable pattern emerged. Packaging was color-coded to indicate contents without writing anything incriminating. Cocaine was always sealed in silver foil, pills in black plastic, and synthetic drugs in vacuum-sealed yellow packets. Marla embedded QR codes that led to fake e-commerce sites, so even if someone opened the package, it looked like a legit delivery. Tavian coordinated drone drops in rural areas, using a fleet of second-hand drones registered under fake names. To handle the money, Eldon connected with someone known only as Hawker, a shadowy figure believed to be in their 20s, possibly based in Poland or Ukraine. Hawker operated a laundering network that disguised the earnings as charitable donations, cryptocurrency mining profits, and foreign scholarships. He took a cut, but guaranteed that every pound Eldon earned could be cleaned and withdrawn without suspicion. Hawker never failed, never revealed his identity, and never gave more than one-word responses. Eldon liked that. The scale of the operation was becoming almost industrial. Hundreds of orders came in weekly, and Eldon tracked them through a self-made dashboard showing delivery routes, payment confirmations, and supply levels. He rarely left the house, but knew exactly what was happening across cities like Manchester, Birmingham, and Bristol. He monitored regional demand, introduced loyalty programs for repeat buyers, and even offered discounts for bulk orders. On the dark web, Black Wolf 93 was treated like a brand, efficient, trusted, and always one step ahead of the authorities. But success bred attention. Police in Oxfordshire, London, and Liverpool began noticing similarities between cases. A series of overdoses involved pills marked with a faint wolf emblem, an odd but distinct signature. One by one, teenagers were arrested during school hours, each caught with a near-identical product. None of them talked about Eldon. Most didn't even know who was behind it. But one message left on a confiscated phone began to raise red flags in the cybercrimes unit. Wait for Black Wolf 93. He was the first direct clue. A phantom name, attached to a growing pile of evidence. Eldon's invisibility had cracks. Small ones, but cracks nonetheless. The network he built to protect himself was becoming too large, too complex, and too reliant on people who didn't fully understand the stakes. And somewhere in London, a team of cybercrime analysts had just added a new name to their target list. As Eldon Krell's empire grew in size and influence, so did the pressure that came with running it. What had started as a sleek, faceless operation was now turning into something more fragile and harder to control. Each new courier, every delivery, and all the digital transactions increased the risk of exposure. The system that once felt untouchable began to show small but dangerous flaws. Eldon noticed them, but he underestimated how quickly they would stack up. The first real crack came through Marla Vent. She had always been Eldon's most important asset, but even the most skilled hacker couldn't prevent human fatigue. Marla started slipping. Her online activity became inconsistent. Her replies delayed. She told Eldon she was being watched. A government laptop had appeared at her local library, where she accessed forums. She suspected someone had flagged her IP. After all, she suspected now. Her address weeks ago, and though she changed locations and tools, her confidence in staying hidden began to fade. She wanted out, but she was in too deep. She knew the system, the layers, and the secrets. Eldon tried to patch her nerves with more money, but fear had already settled in. Tavian Rusk was also showing signs of breakdown. He had been managing courier teams across the north, but the constant movement and lack of rest were wearing on him. Tavian began using the very product he was distributing, which clouded his judgment. He missed a scheduled handoff in York, left behind a package in a public bathroom, and began texting Eldon outside of encrypted platforms. His recklessness wasn't just dangerous, it was a direct threat to the secrecy Eldon had spent years constructing. Then came the courier in Bristol. He was new, recruited by Tavian without vetting. The teenager had agreed to deliver a small batch of high-grade pills during the weekend festival season. But before the delivery, he was stopped by local police at a routine checkpoint. The package was sealed in black plastic and hidden beneath his car seat. At first, the arrest seemed like just another small-time bust. But inside the packet, investigators found something that hadn't appeared in previous cases. A new type of pill, engraved with the stylized wolf symbol. That single marking set off alarms in the National Crime Agency's database. It matched the same pill found months earlier in Manchester, and again in a flat in Reading where a 19-year-old had overdosed. The wolf symbol wasn't common, and detectives realized they were dealing with a larger operation. For the first time, the term Black Wolf 93 appeared in an internal cybercrime report. Investigators began connecting the dots. Different cities, similar product, same digital signature. What had once been random arrests was now seen as the result of a coordinated network. Meanwhile, Eldon's ego began to surface. Though still operating in the shadows, he couldn't resist small displays of success. He started spending his laundered money more freely, buying rare sneakers from Europe, expensive electronics, and even placing a down payment on a rare collector car through a third-party bidding site. Eldon thought he had hidden his tracks, but he made a critical error. The account he used to bid on the car was linked to an old-school email address, one he hadn't used in years, but never properly deleted. That email was still in the system of his former school server, now under cybersecurity review due to a separate, unrelated breach. A digital trace was now in motion. The email linked to a bidding account. The bidding account linked to a Bitcoin wallet, and the wallet had once received a small test payment from one of the shell accounts used by Hacker. The web, once nearly impossible to follow, was starting to take shape. Bit by bit, Eldon's anonymity was dissolving. The final warning came when Marla went completely silent. She didn't log in. She didn't reply. Her secure channels went dark for 4 straight days. He tried reaching Tavian, only to find his messages had been read but not answered. 2 critical pillars of his empire were gone. Still, he refused to believe he was exposed. He told himself they were just being cautious. But in reality, the walls were closing in. Every mistake, every weak link, every piece of overlooked data was now working against him. And far away, in a quiet office in London, a small cyber unit was watching the Black Wolf more closely than ever before. When the National Crime Agency finally formed its special task force to hunt down Black Wolf 93, the operation was codenamed Project GhostNet. It wasn't public, not even shared with regional police departments, because the agency knew the target was someone exceptionally skilled in disappearing. The team consisted of cyber analysts, surveillance experts, and one veteran field agent named Levon Croft, known for bringing down major organized crime rings with nothing but fragments of data. Croft had seen digital phantoms before, but what disturbed him most about Black Wolf 93 wasn't just the scale. It was the age they began to suspect he might be. Everything pointed to a teenager running a national empire. Using the captured couriers, the agency began collecting patterns, GPS pings from failed drops, timing of transactions, and phrasing from intercepted messages. They built heat maps of deliveries and purchase locations, noticing that activity always peaked in clusters, then vanished. These weren't random scatterings of petty drug deals. This was calculated movement, like someone testing systems, adapting, correcting. Eldon's strength had always been invisibility, but the larger his operation became, the more digital fingerprints he left behind. And Croft knew all it took was one overlooked mistake to unravel even the most advanced criminal network. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, an expired domain that had once hosted a fake e-commerce website created by Marla Vent. The domain had been allowed to lapse shortly after she went silent, and someone in the agency decided to acquire it during routine digital housekeeping. What they found stunned the entire team. Buried deep in the archived server files was a cached backup of the original website data, including an old message string accidentally saved in plain text. It was a single conversation between Black Wolf 93 and a supplier named Gladius. Most of it was generic, but one message stood out. It read, "Delivery radius from NR26 getting tight, need alternate drop zone." NR26 was a Norfolk postcode. That was the first confirmed geographic anchor. Croft ordered surveillance on the entire NR26 zone. They didn't know exactly who they were looking for, but they began by scanning internet activity linked to dark web access, particularly during peak hours when the Black Wolf network was most active. They filtered by age groups, narrowed it down to under 25S, then under 18S. Eventually, the list was down to 5 names. One of them was Eldon Krell. At first, he didn't stand out. No criminal record, no major school infractions. But what caught Croft's attention was a report from a school IT technician filed years ago when Eldon was just 14. It mentioned unusual bandwidth usage from a single student profile and a locked device the tech staff couldn't access. No action had been taken at the time. But that forgotten file became Croft's gateway into Eldon's quiet world. Surveillance teams were deployed. They planted cameras across the street from Eldon's house and monitored deliveries, trash, and Wi-Fi signals. Croft insisted on patience. Weeks passed. Then one night, a signal pinged from Eldon's home network that matched the exact server configuration once used on the expired domain. That was it. Proof of a direct digital link to Black Wolf 93S still. They needed more. They wanted to catch him in the act. With digital proof, packaging materials, and communication tools all in place. Croft authorized a silent breach of Eldon's trash bin. Inside, beneath layers of food wrappers and school papers, they found a crumpled shipping label with adhesive residue. The barcode led to a now-defunct delivery company Eldon had used as a cover. It was the final thread. The raid was set on a cold Monday morning just before sunrise. 5 unmarked vans surrounded the Krell residence. Officers stormed the house with tactical precision. Eldon was at his desk, typing. 3 laptops open, screens filled with encrypted chat logs and dashboard visuals of orders in transit. His parents stood frozen in the hallway. The officers didn't need to say anything. Eldon already knew. The empire was over. The teenager who had run Britain's most elusive drug network didn't resist. He stood up, raised his hands, and watched everything he'd built disappear in a blur of sirens and camera flashes. The arrest of Eldon Krell stunned the nation. When news broke that a 17-year-old from a quiet Norfolk village had been secretly running one of the largest underground drug networks in the country, the headlines couldn't get enough. Teen drug lord busted in bedroom raid dominated front pages, while networks ran continuous coverage. Commentators, teachers, and psychologists all tried to explain how a boy with no prior criminal record had become Britain's most successful teen criminal. Stranharv. But inside the cold interrogation rooms of the National Crime Agency, the shock was over. Now came the difficult part, unraveling the full extent of the empire Eldon had built. Eldon remained silent for hours. He answered no questions, requested no lawyer, and refused food. Investigators knew better than to break him with threats or promises. He had prepared for this possibility. But they also knew time was on their side. While Eldon sat in custody, the digital forensic teams were busy tearing through his hardware. Every device in his room was seized. Laptops, routers, USBs, even an old smartphone that had been hidden behind a loose floorboard. Nothing was left untouched. What they found confirmed their worst expectations. Eldon had designed a fully automated dashboard that tracked everything. Deliveries, profits, supplier schedules, drone flight logs, and real-time customer reviews. Thousands of encrypted files pointed to payments processed through multiple laundering channels, all routed through cryptocurrency wallets and shell corporations. He had built systems more sophisticated than some mid-level cartels. Names, locations, and order volumes were coded, but slowly began to form a map of the operation's reach. At its peak, Eldon had managed over 400 deliveries a week. Nearly £1 million had passed through his network in less than 2 years. Outside the agency walls, Marla Vent and Tavian Rusk had both vanished. Their online presences had gone completely dark, and no trace of their physical locations could be found. Some investigators suspected Marla had anticipated Eldon's fall and wiped her existence clean. Others believed she was caught in the net, but hidden too well for standard tracking to work. Tavian, on the other hand, had last been seen weeks earlier near Liverpool. A burner phone recovered from one of his couriers contained a final message: "If he's gone, I'm next." The team knew Eldon would never betray them, but even silence couldn't save everyone. In court, Eldon was charged with over a dozen serious offenses, including distribution of Class A drugs, conspiracy to supply illegal substances, money laundering, and possession of illegal surveillance equipment. The prosecution painted him as a mastermind who had used technology to weaponize his intelligence. The defense, meanwhile, argued that Eldon was a product of neglect, a genius left unsupervised, pulled into crime not by greed but by isolation and curiosity. During trial, the courtroom remained packed. Reporters sat beside psychologists, watching the boy in silence. Eldon never once looked nervous. He showed no remorse, no fear, only a quiet sense of acceptance. For many, this was the most unsettling part, not the crimes themselves, but the calm with which he faced the consequences. The judge, recognizing the complexity of the case, handed down a sentence that shocked both sides. Eldon was sentenced to 12 years in a high-security juvenile rehabilitation facility, with extended monitoring upon release. It was the harshest sentence ever given to a minor for a cyber-driven drug operation in Britain. But even behind locked doors, Eldon remained a symbol either of potential wasted or of brilliance corrupted, depending on who you asked. Yet, there was one final twist no one expected. Months after his sentencing, during a routine audit of prison communication logs, staff discovered that a secure device had been tampered with. A low-level admin system had been accessed using credentials that didn't exist in any official registry. A hidden chat window was found, running in the background of a music app. It contained only one message, sent to an unknown recipient: "Network sleeping. Wake if needed." BW93. The implication was chilling. Despite the Empire being dismantled, the infrastructure might still be alive, dormant, waiting. Somewhere in the digital shadows, Black Wolf 93 hadn't truly died. It had simply gone quiet, and the legend of Britain's youngest drug boss was far from over.